again. I was just wanting to do a video in relation to an area of my life that I've had to do a lot of work on, as well as the many others, um, in relation to an eating issue that I had from childhood and learning the origins of it for myself. In that, whenever I felt as if I didn't deserve food, I wouldn't eat. And it could be in manner of anything real. It could have been anything that I thought I'd done to hurt somebody. It could have been in relation to, um, you know, just a fear of having hurt somebody else or upset them, or, just done something that I personally would have felt awful about. Now, it was never intentional, and I was talking to a good friend of mine earlier today about the fact that it was never a conscious effort to not eat at such times. It was an underlying pattern that had been created in my childhood. And firstly, it began with the fact that as part of our discipline from my extremely strict mother, we were sent to bed without dinner if she decided that we didn't deserve it. So more often than not, we'd be going to bed at 6 o'clock without our dinner and sort of go to bed hungry and, maybe not sleeping properly and not having the essentials that, everybody needs. Our food needs, we need food. It should be just a natural given that, we eat food because, it keeps us alive, really, along with water, obviously. But I also realised that not only had that been a form of discipline that she had imposed, but actually it was a coping strategy that my father himself carried out. So he would do that if he thought, for any reason, he was unhappy, he felt bad about himself, then he would literally starve himself as well. He didn't think that he deserved food, in the same way that I'd learned to take that message myself from the attitudes of my mother. So you did something wrong, you were sent to bed without your dinner, gave the message to that child, the inner child that used to be me, that I didn't deserve food, and we need food for survival, essentially. So, the feelings of unworthiness that are attached with, that then led to me feeling sick inside, me feeling uncomfortable, me having all sorts of negative thoughts and beliefs about myself, would actually make me feel unable to eat. So in a way, this is definitely an eating disorder, one that was never diagnosed probably, and I probably didn't actually give anybody the opportunity to diagnose anything, but ultimately that was a pattern that I used to undertake, and I've had to do a lot of work on that. But last night, early in the evening, I was sitting meditating. I was listening to something on YouTube which was in fact talking about eating disorders, and it sort of triggered this train of thought. The fact that it was, a habit that my father had. I was actually continually told by my mother whenever she decided she was angry that, in a negative way as well, that I was very much like my father. It was never said in a pleasant way, and I think automatically, if we're told something like that, we do naturally start to take on ways of being that that person have. And obviously when you're around them for as long as you are as a child, obviously at least the first 18 years, and then that message is compounded when you see that person that you care about taking that option, then you're going to do it yourself, but also it was used as a punishment as well. So you know, whether that person's now deciding whether we should be eating, and in a position to be able to do that, we've still learned to do it for ourselves. So, you know, self-punishment, not eating is one of those things that I've had to wrestle with. But ultimately, what I also realised was I was extremely, you know, strong in self-discipline. And the reason I was so self-disciplined was because I saw my older sister rebelling. She would answer back, as it was called in our family. She would try to stand up for herself. She would try to tell the truth. And she was told not to answer back. Whatever my mother said was fact. Nobody had a right to stand up to her. So it was pretty incredible. So I learned just to keep quiet from seeing, you know, and I learned to conform and try and fit in to keep my mother happy. But the thing was, it was never going to keep her happy. There was always something that she expected you to be able to do, you to be able to know. Always, you know, you should know better. All sorts of reasons for, you know, telling a child things that, you know, put too much responsibility and pressure on that child to know things that maybe that parent should be teaching the child. So, excuse me. But I also learned that the self-discipline I was enforcing was the unhealthy self-discipline that my mother had been using in her very strict ways. So therefore I learned to actually do that myself. And I know lots and lots of other people have learned to do this because of strict parenting. It could have been, you know, a toxic mother, it could have been a narcissistic mother, it could have been a narcissistic parent. And then we've gone on to learn to try and defend ourselves in an equally unhealthy way, which is also, if we do it to ourselves, then maybe it will stop what's happening to us. So we then start telling ourselves all the things to, in a vain attempt to try and stop that other person from doing it. But the truth is, it never worked. So our attempts at trying to call a halt by showing them that we were actually doing it for ourselves anyway, it doesn't mean that they're actually going to stop. And ultimately, what I also realised was that all of the abusive relationships that I had in the following years, leading up to the one that I left in the age of 42, which then triggered my journey, it actually, you know, they didn't actually need to do any of the stuff they were doing because I was literally so self-controlled and so awful to myself, so unloving towards myself. The, the transfer of the hatred of my mother onto my own self-hatred and the ways I was treating myself in extremely unhealthy and very strict ways, uh, relating to what I'd been taught as a child. Now, you know, it's quite funny really that we adopt those positions because we see it as a form of or an attempt at self-preservation, self-protection. But it doesn't happen. It doesn't put them off. It just makes them, you know, do it even more. So we're also double disciplining ourselves. So we're doing it to ourselves in that attempt to stop them from doing it, you know, to us as well. But also then they're doing it on top. They're abusing us on top. They're calling us names on top. They're telling us we're not good enough on top. They're trying to make us conform to their ways of being or what they want us to be. And you know, it's already been done. So they've completely wasted their time as well. But you know, ultimately looking back, you know, if they'd known that, then they wouldn't have bothered. But hey, that's the way things go. But you know, ultimately, I had to learn to love myself. I had to learn to even what healthy ways of loving and what love really is has been a huge part of the journey. I've had to learn to build my self-esteem using affirmations. I've had to take steps to show myself that I can do things that I was always told I couldn't do, and held back from. But I'm doing it in a different way. I'm doing it myself. Nobody's telling me that I can't do it anymore. And I realised that in fact a lot of it was that it was, my mind telling me these things as well, because of those things that I'd been told as a kid.